guys so much for stopping in our little panel here. We're going to be talking about collecting the filming locations and how that ties in to preserving Star Wars. Now, you guys might think I'm crazy, but as you know, Star Wars turns 50 in 2027. Does it need preserving? Yes, it does, because as generational as it is, what is Star Wars going to look like 50 years from now? I don't know, and neither do you guys, but I think it's important that we think about the footprint that we want to leave behind for other fans in the community. What Star Wars, the evolution of Star Wars, right? As Richard from Skywalker to Neverland, he was there in the beginning. I was there, but I was 2 years old when the first film came out. And fandom itself has changed a great deal. My 2 documentaries that are on Amazon, The Force Among Us and The Force Within Us, focus on fandom and what it was like then, and even back what it was like before that. And I'm going to do a 3rd documentary coming out in 2027 that's going to focus around the state of fandom now, which, as you know, has some pros and cons. I feel like the thing about fandom is we become so passionate about it, we own it. Can anybody relate to that in here? Yeah, I know you can. A little bit, right? All right, with me is MachTails from the Cantina live show producer, Matthew Rooney. Matt, not to bore you guys here, Matthew has a PhD in anthropology from the University of Florida and works as an assistant professor and research station archaeologist. Now, I say archaeologist, you guys think Indiana Jones, a whip and a gun, right? That is not the case. He has conducted field work in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas. He's currently the president of Preserve Arkansas, Arkansas's only statewide nonprofit for historical preservation, a trustee for the Arkansas Historical Association, and an associate editor for the Southeastern Archaeological Conference. All right, did I say all that right? Yeah. Okay, so he is here because we need to bring credibility to this. Just not some crazy fan ranting about why it's important to collect, why it's important to preserve. We see preservation right now done really well from Roger Christian, who just released a memoir and a documentary that really he wants to make sure that the torch from the beginning of this franchise is understood through his eyes. And we see a lot of Disney Plus, a lot of great, fantastic ILM documentaries. These are all tools that help us remember and understand, and we can teach our children to keep this legacy alive and going and keep it kind of true to its roots, where it all began on my 2nd birthday, May 25th, 1975. So Matthew, why do you think, as an archaeologist, and I know you're biased about this subject, but you obviously have credibility behind it, why do you think it's important for people to collect? Before you answer that question, I want to ask you guys a question. How many of you are Star Wars collectors? Pretty much everybody, right? Okay. You're going to explain to these people why it's important for them to collect, and they can go home and they can tell their spouse, hey, this archaeologist said, it's important to collect because it preserves, Well, I want you to get into that if you don't mind.
Well, hi everybody, again I'm Matthew, and so as an archaeologist, my main task is to basically try to learn and interpret the past based on the stuff that people leave behind. So there are historians who do work with documents, and there are people who do ethnography, where they do oral history and they'll interview people who are still alive to get some of that information down. But then there's a whole other amount of evidence that we can get through the stuff that people leave behind. And often there's people in the past who didn't leave written records, or they didn't have like a written language. They had like a oral tradition that was passed down. So there's all kinds of information that can be gleaned from finding stuff that people left behind in the past. And sometimes it's things that are intentionally left behind, sometimes it's things that are unintentionally left behind. I do a lot of work with like indigenous groups in the Southeast who didn't have written documentation, and they have their own oral traditions, but they like to work with us because we can look at artifacts that their ancestors left behind and we can help interpret what their stories were. And there's a lot of people who do archaeology of the more recent past, like in the 1800s and 1900s, because a lot of that information, believe it or not, gets lost. Like even those of you who are maybe our age, like 40 to 50, were around when the internet first came about, and if you think about like the internet in the 1990s, it was very different than it is now, and a lot of that's not documented. So somebody who is younger, who's 15 or 20 years old, wouldn't know anything about the internet as it was back then. So even the more recent past things that we kind of take for granted that we think don't need to be documented, really do need to be documented. So when it comes to collecting and saving things from the past, whether it's information or it's collectibles, or like I love the books that were done by the Skywalker to Neverland group, because it meticulously documents all kinds of information about the past that would otherwise not it would be lost, but also it's done in an accessible way that anybody can get a hold of and understand. And that's a big part of preserving the past too, is not only collecting it and having it somewhere, having it hold up somewhere, but having it being on display and available for people to have access to as well. So that's why it's important. For instance, George Lucas is doing an art museum where he's got all of this art that he's collected, and it doesn't do a lot of good, just for him to have it privately. It does all kinds of good for people, publicly, to have access to that culture, to be able to experience it and use that to enrich their own lives. And there's of course, museums like Rancho Obi-Wan, where they're preserving things and having them on display. And I'm sure there's lots of people who will display their collections virtually and physically as well. And that's a way of sort of preserving the past and also sharing with new generations of people. Like I keep artifacts. I have a research station, and so I have artifacts for 7 different counties where I do my work, and I'm sort of a steward for that. I keep all those artifacts there, and keep them in a certain type of climate control, but they're also accessible to researchers who like to come and study them and interpret them and to make research out of it. Or if the public wants to come and look at stuff, or they want to volunteer in the lab, it's all available for them as a public service to be able to look at that stuff too. And so, collecting is similar. It's a way of knowing the past that's a different line of evidence than just listening to somebody talk about the past or reading about it. It's something that's tactile, and I think things are magic. They're sort of magical too. Like when you have something like the sand from the film location, it has a connection to a different time and place. And so when you're holding that in your hand or looking at it, it gives you a different connection to it than you would have just imagining or reading about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Does everybody have a reason why they collect, or are they just like, hey, I love Star Wars, and here I am all these years later, and now my collection is taking up my entire house? Or have you guys given it much thought about why you collect, or has it been on kind of autopilot now for 20, 30, 40 years?
Nostalgia, yeah.
Nostalgia's a huge reason, yeah. And then actually the book that you did, This Day in Star Wars History, that is preserving the past, and it's preserving it when it happened on that day, which I think is another big part, because some of the stuff, you guys work on archaeology with pigs, you don't, there's a lot of work to find that out. You've made it really easy to find out when something happened specifically on this day, and it could be a big event or a small event, but it's all relevant. And I think as the internet grows and generations come in after us and come after you youngsters, that made me sound old, youngsters. I think things can get lost in translation. And one of the things I do on MachTails from the Cantina is I like to interview a lot of celebrities at the conventions and in my documentary as well. And the crazy thing is that as time is moving on, Robert Watts, who was in my second documentary, he was the producer on Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He is gone. Jeremy Bullock, who played Boba Fett, he is gone. Angus McGinnis, Mark Dodson was in Return of the Jedi. All these people look, we're not immortal. I know that sounds a little depressing on such a great, fun weekend, but I think it's important for these people that were part of Star Wars to have their story shared. Maybe they're not, the chief model maker, maybe they're not George Lucas, but these people all still have stories, and you guys meeting the actors, and telling them your story. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to celebrities, and I said, what is it about the conventions that you love attending? What is it about, and they keep telling me, I love hearing from the fans, I love hearing about their stories, I love hearing about what Star Wars means to them. So again, it comes back to this fan community that we've built over several years. And I think it's changed a little bit, and it's grown a lot, but I think the fans' point of view is very important, because if it wasn't for the fans, the franchise wouldn't be as successful. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? If I had one question for George Lucas, it would be, George, give me one word that describes the fans. I think the fans have really driven this franchise for what is turning 50, 2027. Has anybody been out to Stephen Sansweet's Rancho Obi-Wan? Does everybody know about Stephen Sansweet's Rancho Obi-Wan? So Stephen Sansweet is in the Guinness Book of World Records. He has the biggest Star Wars collection, and he has opened his collection for the fans to come and experience. It is a non-profit organization. It is a great way of preserving what you talked about, artifacts, toys, things that fans have made over the years. And they're closing it down, but he is smart enough to realize that, hey, I'm not immortal. This needs to belong in a museum, to quote Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum, and they are taking it to the next level to have a bigger place and to have more people's collections involved, because they realize the importance of preserving collectibles. One of the things that I was not disappointed by, but found out, I think I was living under a rock. The Lucas Museum was supposed to be in Chicago, right? We all know that that's happening in LA. And that's good for California boy, right? And I figured, wow, it's kind of crazy that this is not a museum that's preserving Star Wars. But when I listened to George Lucas's interview at San Diego Comic-Con, where you guys just came from, it is so important for him to preserve the things that inspired him and the things that he loved. Again, it's passing down his story well beyond his years of mortality, But I figured, why wasn't this a full-on ILM museum? I don't know. Were you a little disappointed in that?
Yes, because it's a huge museum. It's a couple of city blocks. It's really big. But I know he doesn't want it to be a Star Wars museum. And there will be a lot of Star Wars stuff in there. They downplay that, but there will be a lot of Star Wars stuff. Not as much as you may hope, but there's going to be a lot.
Sure, and I think there has to be, right? You can't have a Lucas Museum without having some Star Wars in there,
What about, I'd like to hear, some of us know about the stuff you've done, but I think a lot of people here don't know much about the documentaries you've made. You set out to also document a certain moment in history. Chris's first film is called The Force of No Message, created in 2006, came out in 2007.
Came out in 2007, that's dated.
It really well documents fandom at that point in time. Like I was a fan back then, and when I go and watch it, I can kind of re-experience what fandom was like at the time, which is not the same as it is now. So can you tell people, was that your intention when you made that film? What was your goal that you had in mind? And long term, what do you think about that project?
Well, it's funny. Force Among Us was shot in 2006, 2007. We actually went to the filming location in Norway, where in Finch 1222, where they filmed The Empire Strikes Back. And I wanted to showcase in this documentary about fans how many different kinds of fans that there are. There's the autograph collector, there's the nostalgia collector, there are the podcasters. Podcasting was kind of just starting to be a thing back in those days. And there's the people that go to the filming locations, there's people that don't collect anything but find a very, very deep spiritual connection with within those films, and I was just kind of fascinated, like, wow, there's a lot of layers to this onion, Star Wars fandom, but at the center, we all have these different stories and different paths, what led us to become fans. But it's all Star Wars bringing us together, you know? And I guess it kind of happened a little bit organically. And then the Force Within us, we interviewed Ashley Eckstein, and like I said, Jeremy Bullock, Robert Watts, a bunch of people that worked on the Return of the Jedi film up in Northern California, just to kind of, again, document these people were living in this economical depressed town in Northern California, and how George Lucas rolled in there in 1982 and kind of changed all the locals' lives. Like, wow, we're working on the last Star Wars film here. And again, those people, it touched their lives, but in a very, very different way, obviously. So my films are available on Amazon. And then, of course, MachTails from the Cantina. If you guys don't know what that is, it is a show where I just talk about fandom, interview the celebrities, find out deeper meanings of why they are so connected to something that they were a part of, and how Star Wars has changed their life. I kind of get tired of asking, how has Star Wars changed their life? But it really has. Is there anybody in here that Star Wars did not change your life? Could you guys imagine your life without Star Wars? Could you put yourself in those shoes and see yourself the same way you are today? It's impossible. It's impossible to fathom. But I don't know. It's a little different than archaeology, you know?
It is, but I think you're still preserving something. But when you do interviews, I mean, you have a different kind of an interview style than some other podcasts, other kinds of documentary people. Can you describe like your approach when you're interviewing people to kind of give them a taste of what they can get if they want to listen to MachTails from fans?
Yeah, I think you'll get to know the actor deeper as a person. I know there's a lot of YouTube shows out there, and there's a lot of podcasters that were way before me. But as a filmmaker, I've always liked to take the art of interviewing people, and getting to know them on a personal level, as opposed to asking them a question. If I'm the 10th guy that interviewed them, I mean, I would think that they don't want to answer the question, hey, what was it like to be in the X-Wing cockpit? You know, because they've been asked that before. So I asked them, what was your first memory of Star Wars before you even worked on the film? Do you have kids? Do your kids think it's cool that mom or dad are in the Star Wars franchise? And I always get the same answer. My kids think that anything I do isn't cool. The actors are I think they're very, very humble that way, and it's just good to know these people on a personal level, because at the end of the day, they're people, just like you and I, you know. Has anybody been to any Star Wars filming location? You're like me with trivia here. Okay, which one did you go to?
I've been in the area where the Rebel Scum Con.
Richard, how about you? I'm assuming the California locations, yes?
Yes, I've been to the place where they shot the Death Star back.
Oh, yeah.
In Van Nuys, California,
Yeah.
Street, the parking lot, mile around, is where they shot the Death Star back.
Yeah.
I've driven in there, oh sorry, I'm turning around. Saying, I flew, where Luke Skywalker flew.
That's a deep cut. Yeah, it's funny. I went to George Lucas's childhood home and was sitting outside in the street. This was quite a while ago, 2004. Sitting outside across the street, and somebody's like, why is there somebody stalking us right now? And then in Modesto, his hometown. Which is great because they preserved his legacy in that hometown. There is a George Lucas statue in the small town square there. And again, I think things like that, this happened here is so important because it tells a story, and things are gonna, as time moves on, 100 years from now, time is going to get away from us, and things can change. So I think that's why it's important to to preserve it. If anybody's interested in going to any of the Star Wars filming locations, the internet is still being used for good, even though there's a dark side to the internet. There's been a dark side of the internet for a long time, but there's a lot of useful tools. I mean, even if you just say, where were the Star Wars movies filmed? And there's a lot of them. God, Death Valley in California. I mean, it's hotter there than it is here, but it's quite the experience to see. And it beats going to Tunisia, in my opinion.
Can you explain, like, you've mentioned most of the places you've been to, but like, what are the scenes that are there for people who maybe aren't as familiar with those? Which scenes were in Death Valley?
Well, Death Valley, you have the road to Jabba's palace, and I wish this computer was insane, but you guys gotta go. You gotta Google all this stuff. There's the road to Jabba's palace. It's great. You can line up the shots. You can stand in that same exact spot that R2 and 3PO stood in. Death Valley, they shot Jawa Canyon. They shot the land speeder there. Tusken Raiders with the Banda there. Remind me, what's the elephant's name? Margie. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. A lot more stuff from A New Hope in Death Valley, because if you think about it, when they went to Tunisia, they needed pickup shots. Why not go a little closer to home, California, and pick up some shots there, you know?
And you mentioned that the Redwoods, some of those have been cut down, but there's also Cheatham Grove, right?
Yeah, Cheatham Grove is a national park in the Redwood Forest that is near Eureka, and that is where the speeder bike chase was. If you guys have not watched the ILM documentaries on Disney Plus, they are fascinating. Probably about an 8-part series, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they essentially show scenes from this. But Northern California, a little bit of a sad story. You know, after they filmed the bunker scene up there, they cut down all the trees, and it looks so different nowadays. It still looks the same, but you're not going to find the bunker, but you're going to be in the environment where they filmed all the scenes forever. And I think that's the essence of Star Wars, right?
Well, believe it or not, trees grow and fall down.
Yeah.
Even within 50 years.
Especially, 1982 was a long time ago, right? And those trees were mammoth then. So, I want to be respectful of the time that we have. I want to ask you guys, we got about 5 minutes? Okay. You know, I want to kind of open this up for discussion. Going back to when collecting, what is the number one piece in your collection that if my house was burning down, what would you grab? That would be the piece. I'm always fascinated with people have in their collection. Does anybody have?
Maybe you should start with yours.
Mine would be the set pieces from Tunisia. When I was out there, Tunisia was very strange. George Lucas left everything behind. And there are locals out there in this third world country, and they come out of these little huts, and they bring items that weren't from Star Wars. They create dragon bone pieces from the homestead, and it's all legit stuff. I went to a junkyard and I saw a bunch of pod racer parts there. I'm like, well, yeah, it makes sense. I talked to Roger Christian too, and he's like, yeah, we had to leave all that stuff there. You know what it would cost to get that stuff back? And now it belongs in a museum, you know? The set pieces, I think, because they're one of a kind, I obtained them from the local people that were fortunate enough to make some kind of money, because it really is a third world country. I don't know how people live out there, but they do. Those are mine. Richard, how about you? You got a piece in your collection?
I'd say the vintage items I had when I was a kid. Like my Darth Vader Ben Cooper costume. That I would say, just because I look at that and tons of memories flooding back to that Halloween of 1977. I wore that suit, I walked down the street, I thought I was Darth Vader. And when someone said to me, look at your cute costume, it's like, costume? I'm gonna burn your friggin' house down, lady. You're 8 years old. Yes, and this is what I shall do.
Yeah, plus some more, right? right? So it's a part of your childhood.
Yes.
And, I picked up some of those Ben Cooper costumes at the toy show down the street from my house and the conventions and stuff. But I didn't wear them. They're nostalgic to me, but they're not. I wish I had mine from when I was a kid.
I see it.
Again, it's so important to have that stuff because
The early action figures, the early bird sets, the original play sets, the vehicles. Look at that. That's a sincere time of family.
yeah.
When kids they need a nap, just push the landscaper down the street and they go that problem.
And I'm sure you probably have photos, next to grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad opening that for this morning, and it's like, hey, I still have that. It's tangible, I think that's it's important to pass down to family members, and I think it definitely. Not everybody wants to be connected to their past. I know I do certain parts of it. That's why I'm a huge Star Wars fan. But I think there's something that's very comfortable and soothing about that.
For me, it would be, so I named my son Quinlan. He's born in 2007, after the Quinlan Voss character, which I think he's okay with, because it's also an Irish name, and we're all Irish, so. But we went to Celebration 5 in 2010, which we were talking about earlier, and Jan Dursema, who's the artist who made that character, was there, and so I got my son to take a picture with her. He was 3, so it was hard. It took a lot of tries to get him to take a picture with her. And then I got her to sign Republic number 77. It's my favorite cover with Quinlan Voss on it. So I got her to sign that, and she and I are friends. Like, she likes all my cat pictures. She's even like, I'm on her Patreon, and she'll like give me stuff and say, just give the money towards your cat. But I would like to, like even though I'm friends with her, and obviously my son is more precious than the comic book, that's just a special memory. I would like to save that in the catastrophic.
Does anybody have their collection in a situation where it's in a storage locker somewhere, or it's in the basement in tubs, and they're just like, I don't know where to put this stuff? Does anybody have? So, I think that is a big challenge with collecting. Time, money, and space, right? That's what I learned from Stephen Sansweet when he started, talking to people in 2002. I said, Steve, I'm collecting, and the prequels have just come out, and I said, things are getting out of control. He goes, you gotta stay focused, you gotta collect what you like, and you always have to remember that you have time, space, and money are an issue. And here I am all these years later, and yeah, that's an issue. I've sold some of it. Just stuff that I could maybe live without, but then I look at what I've kept, and it's all in the tops of the basement, Aside from the stuff that I have, in the nice display cabinets in the basement. How important do you think it is for people to share their collection with others, as opposed to, we met my friend who was in the Force Among Us that had a vintage collection that would make Stephen Sansweet's rule. And he goes, I don't have it on display for anybody. He's like, it's all for me. I'm like, you should put that in the Saga Museum. How important do you think it is to share like that?
I mean, I think it is nice to have that stuff available, but obviously there's the issue of, protecting it and making sure that it's safe and not going to get damaged or taken by the so it just depends on the situation, I suppose. But with your new documentary that you're going to do, like, what are you going to do for that that's different than the ones you've done before? Are you going to do new film locations, or like you said, fandom has kind of changed? So what kind of questions do you want to answer about fans today that's different than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago?
Well, I think, I was told by a lot of people to stay away from the negativity part of fandom, but I really think it tells the story. I feel like watching fandom grow, that there has been this divide. There's been this hate towards certain film projects, certain TV shows. The internet has kind of worked against fandom in that way. The internet used to be, you do a whole panel on fandom in the internet. It used to be a place where people would get together, they would, meet, hang out, go to chat rooms, swap items, organize meetups, this sort of thing. And that's still going on today. Don't get me wrong. That's how you guys probably ended up here. You saw the post on Facebook, said, okay, this is happening. So I but I think it's a big part of the evolution of where fandom came from. It came from the innocent days of playing in the backyard, wearing the Ben Cooper costumes, even if it wasn't Halloween, getting action figures and vehicles for getting good grades, which I never got in school. So I had to wait till Christmas and birthdays and that sort of thing. And when it came back, everybody was hyped up about it, celebrated it. And then when it came back again, when Lucas had sold to Disney, there was this great rejoice, but there was also, hey, this is just the way I see it. There was this divide and not a crash from everybody, obviously. And you know what, for somebody that appreciates everything Star Wars, not to sound oversensitive here, but it's really hard to listen to people, smash and bash the things that we love. So that's an important part of fandom today, and that's going to probably change 20 years from now. But again, it's capturing the moment now. And I think as a documentarian, it's important to tell the story of the moment when we're living. And I have a daughter. Can anybody relate to this? I have a daughter that's turning 11 next week, and she knows all the Star Wars characters, but she just doesn't. She's like, Daddy, I don't like Star Wars. I'm like, she always wants me to bring home a loth cat. She always wants, she wants a little collectible, but it's a little heartbreaking that my daughter does not love Star Wars like I do. Can anybody else relate to that?
Yeah, my 12-year-old daughter is at home in Arkansas because I couldn't talk her into coming down.
It would be a nice bonding experience, right?
I do think it comes and goes. Like my kids are in college, and like there's phases where they come. Like my son right now wants to watch all the stuff with me, and so and then now I'm the busy one, so I can make time to go back and watch stuff with him because I've watched it all already. And he's like getting into it, himself in his own way. So it doesn't mean that it won't happen.
So I think that's a part of the story, because my father committed suicide when I was 7 years old. And when I was in high school, I was, in junior high school, I found The Empire Strikes Back on Betamax. It was a bootleg, and I tell the story in the documentary. But for those of you that haven't seen it, Star Wars was like the thing that I needed to heal me and connect me with my past before my father left this place. And it just brought me back to a warm and fuzzy place. When my childhood was innocent and I didn't have to grow up, so fast, become this adult at 8 years old. So my story now is, I don't have this Star Wars connection with my daughter. Fandom's a little bit in shambles. There's been this evolution of it. But you know what? I've been loving, breathing, sleeping, and eating Star Wars all this way, and there's all these little side notes that have affected me, that I am still, I can't leave Star Wars because Star Wars is home for me, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that part. There's this warm and fuzzy feeling that this franchise just gives us, like no other franchise does, Otherwise, we would see conventions for so many other big franchises, and I know we have Comic-Con and that sort of thing that incorporates everything, but not like Star Wars, not like Rebel Scum Con, not like ICC down in Nashville. Is this anybody's first Rebel Scum Con? Mine too, yeah.
This is our first time.
If you guys didn't go to celebrations in yesteryear, so how many people went to Star Wars Celebration 2? So these early days of the Star Wars Celebration, for those of you that don't know, it's the official Star Wars convention, that Lucasfilm puts on. And it's become this big mammoth thing. I mean, it's huge. And coming here to this convention, what I love about it is it transports me back to the early days where cons were more intimate, and it wasn't just this, okay, you want to meet this actor? Okay, take the money. Okay, next. All the actors out there you can spend time with getting to know for the moment and just really, really getting an experience from it, Star Wars Celebration is great. I've been to all of them except the ones overseas, except Celebration Europe 1 in London in 2007. But I love these smaller cons because we get to know people and we get to become friends for, probably the rest of our lives.
Yeah, every time we come to them now, like I see people that, it's sort of like catch up with people every year, at these different cons and see how they're doing. It's nice.
Yeah, I started asking people that have come to these smaller conventions, I'm like, why? What is it for you? Why do you come here? And they said, I come here because I get to see friends and become family that I've met the last 3 or 4 conventions ago. And, a lot of people don't have friends and family back at home that they share the Star Wars experience with. So, again, another thing I hear from a lot of people, fans and the celebrities, is the thing about this franchise is the community of it. And can I ask you, what is your take on why is community important?
Well, it's what makes us human. The reason humans have survived so long is first of all, that we're able to adapt to a lot of environments, but also it's that we rely on each other. When you think about, when a child is raised, it's usually not with a single person, it's with a family unit. And it's sort of what keeps us together and it helps us to survive, is that culture that we share with each other that makes us human in the first place. People try to define all the time, like what separates humans from other types of animals, and I would say that it's that symbolic culture, which Star Wars is a form of symbolic culture that we pass down and share with each other. And so that's just what it means to be human.
And I know these collector groups, the 501st, the people that do the costumes, this is like a brotherhood. It's like they're doing something together. They're creating something together, they're experiencing something together. Because I guess, we're not all extroverts, but I think it's important to experience this passion that we have for this franchise with people. Like you said, it's part of our human nature, It really, really is. As we wrap up, does anybody have any questions? I do have some stuff to give you guys, some swag, some from the filming locations, in case you're like, what? That was a little too hot for me. I can barely handle Frisco, Texas. I'm going to sit it out. So we do have miles of sand to give away as well. Anybody have any comments, questions, or anything that they want to share?
Tell us more about your documentary.
Well, now I can taste the pressure.
You have to make it.
Well, it's funny. What I can tell you is the last film that we released, Force Within Us, came out in 2012. We tackled the nightmare and monster of doing a reality TV show called The Real Fans of the Saga. And it was a play on the Real Housewives series that started on Bravo, which is also on Amazon. And people got so mad at that, they're like, oh my God, are you gatekeeping? What do you mean the real fans? What makes you more of a fan than me? I'm like, you guys are missing it. You guys are missing it. So I wanted to do a third documentary to close it out. Star Wars always comes in trilogies, right? You got the OT, you got the PT, and then you got the sequel, right? So I said, I gotta make one more. 2027 is going to be the anniversary of The Force Among Us. 20 years, my first documentary. It's going to be the 50th of Star Wars. I said, let's do this while the timing makes sense. And I reached out to Ian, my brother that I went to school with, and he helped me make all these film projects except the first one. I said, Ian, I want to do a third Star Wars doc. And I would love to go to some of the filming locations as well that I did not go to. Just to, look, Star Wars fans like continuity, right? Filming locations are in my first two documentaries. They gotta be in the third.
So where's an example of where you really haven't been yet? Is it film?
I would like to go to Michael Skilling Island, which is... Skilling Michael. I always say that backwards. Also known as Porg Island, I guess, That's what I refer to it as. That's why there's all these cool little spots in London that they use. They use the subway for parts parts of Rogue One, and you know, the Jar Jar Forest is out there. Stuff that's kind of cheap to go to, you know? Places that are cheap to go to. There's a lot of exotic spots that Rogue One was shot on. One of my favorite Star Wars films. And it doesn't make sense for me to go there because, you know, my wife would like to go there. You know, it's like a nice vacation for the family. But if I'm like, hey, you gotta bring him with me. There's a lot of, doing documentaries is different than shooting stuff with your phone, you know? It's a process, you know? But anyways, as we wrap it up, anybody last minute questions? No?
Can you explain what you're giving out?
Yes, so I am going to give out something that's a throwback to the old school Star Wars carbacks. These are the girls that represent the MachTails from the Cantina brand, and there is a QR code on the back that will give you guys free content to the show. You don't even have to pay for it. Again, it's for fans by the fans, right? And then I got a little vial of what I call Earth sand from the R2 dudes. You'll notice in A New Hope, R2 leaves 3PO when they fight, and it's crazy. You can line up the mountains in the back. And when I was out there shooting The Force Within Us, which is on Amazon, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring some sand back and give this to the people that are supporting the project and the people that are coming to the panel today. So, hey, I'm your show host, Chris Mark. This is Matthew Rooney, my show producer, and we want to thank you guys for attending the MachTails from the Cantina.